Always in late autumn, I find myself thinking about my mother, who died a day after Thanksgiving several years ago. She was a wonderful woman, a woman who was bright and vibrant, and who lived her life, as the saying goes, in living color. Except that in the last few years of her life, we watched as she faded and faded and faded until she became just a pastel shadow of who she really was. One autumn, my sister and I unexpectedly got the responsibility of caring for our mother for several months. It was hard. Each of us had a husband and children at home and calendars that were filled with so many appointments and obligations. But what could we do? We did our best. We took turns spelling each other off. But I found myself always thinking, when I was in Pasadena with my mother, I thought, I should be in Penasquitos with my family who needs me. But when I was in Penasquitos with my family, I found myself thinking, I should be in Pasadena with my mother who needs me. It was in that time that I began pondering the ancient Chinese story of Chein Nang, and I found that it resonated with me deeply. I think you will be able to see why. Once, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, there was a young woman named Chein Nang. Her mother had died several years before, but she was the jewel of her father's life. She was beautiful and intelligent and kind. One day she was in the market in their town, and she encountered a merchant, a man named Ochu. And he was just there for a few days. He was on his way back to his home in Nanking. He'd been traveling in markets and faraway lands, buying and selling. But they struck up a conversation, and it became clear before they had engaged in the slightest conversation, a dozen words or more, that there was an attraction between them. They were falling in love. And so Chein Yang took Ochu back home to meet her father. She was sure that he would be delighted that she had found a man that she could love. But when she looked at his face, it did not register delight. He looked at her sadly and shook his head and said, Chein Yang, I am sorry, but this cannot be. Just today I have received an order from the magistrate. You are required to marry his nephew. Oh, no, father, she said, no. Surely we can explain. Other arrangements could be made. No, Chein Yang. The message was very clear. To disobey this mandate from the magistrate would put you in danger, and me as well. And he turned to Ochu and he said, if you do love my daughter, you will leave this place at once and not return. Be assured that when she marries the magistrate's nephew, she will be entering into a life of luxury. She will want for nothing. I understand, said Ochu, and he turned and hurried away before anyone could see the tears that were welling up in his eyes. He went down to the shore and began to prepare his sailboat for the journey back to Nanking the next morning. But of course he was thinking about Chein Yang. And then he heard her voice. She was calling his name. And he thought perhaps he had imagined it, but when he turned around, no, it was Chein Yang. She was running toward him, throwing her arms around his neck. He said, so your father, he must have changed his mind. Oh, no, my father did not change his mind. But I have also not changed my mind. I love you. We are meant to be together. I will come with you to Nanking tomorrow. And so the next morning, the two of them set sail for Nanking. Chein Yang was warmly welcomed by Ochu's parents. The two of them were married, and they settled down to live their lives together. In the years that came, they had two children, a boy and a girl, and they were very happy, and Ochu's business prospered. But one day, and they were talking, and Chein Yang said, I am so happy, but there is just one thing that brings me sadness. I am sorry that I have not seen my father. I have wondered about him. Did the magistrate take some sort of vengeance? Is he well? Is he still alive? I have wondered the same, said Ochu. We should go and visit him. And so leaving their children in the care of the grandparents, Ochu and Chein Nang set sail for Chein Nang's hometown. They walked down the street and they paused outside the gate of the garden that surrounded Chein Nang's father's house. Ochu said, "Wait here, Chein Nang. I will go in and I will speak to your father, and that way, if he is still angry, you will not have to speak with him." Chein Nang agreed. Ochu opened the gate and went into the garden and found Chein Nang's father sitting on a stone bench, looking older and more frail than he had imagined. "Hello," he said. I do not know if you remember me, but I am the man who fell in love with your daughter 5 years ago." The old man looked up. "Of course I remember you. I have thought many times since that day that I was wrong to send you away. How are you?" "I am well," said Ochu, "and my wife is also." "Oh, you are married?" "Well, yes. Chein Nang and I were married as soon as we got to Nanking. We have two children now. We're very happy." And the old man thought, "This man is surely mad. I do not know who he has married, but it is not Chein Nang. Chein Nang has been in the house in her room these 5 years, weeping and grieving. She seldom leaves her bed. She doesn't eat much or sleep much. I'm afraid that she will soon die." And speaking in small words and slowly as one would to a child, he said to Ochu, "Chein Nang has been here in the house for these 5 years. I will tell her that you are here. Perhaps she will agree to meet you." Meanwhile, Ochu thought to himself, "Oh, the poor old man. He is clearly mad. I don't know who he thinks has been in his house weeping and grieving for 5 years, but it is not Chein Nang. She has been with me." And so he spoke to Chein Nang's father, using small words and speaking slowly as one would to a child. "Chein Nang is waiting out by the garden gate. I will tell her to come in and talk to you." And so it was that the father went into the house, into Chein Nang's room, and he found to his surprise that she had left her bed. She was up and she was brushing her hair. "Ochu is in the garden. He wishes to see you," said her father. And she brushed past him to enter the garden, a smile on her face. Ochu went out to the garden gate and motioned to Chein Nang to come in. "Your father will meet with you," he said. Chein Nang opened the gate and hurried into the garden, a smile on her face. And so, on one side of the garden, by the gate, there was Chein Nang. And on the other side of the garden, by the house, there was Chein Nang. And the father and the husband looked back and forth from one to the other. They were perplexed, confused. How was it possible that there were two Chein Nangs? Was it magic? Was it an illusion? And if there were two, which was the real Chein Nang? As I said, they were perplexed. But the two Chein Nangs, they were not perplexed at all. No, when they saw each other, they gave a cry of delight, and they hurried together. And when they met, it was as if it were two drops of water that joined to become one. And where there had been two Chein Nangs, now there was one. Well, this is a very ancient story from the 700s. But since that time, all these hundreds and hundreds of years, scholars and philosophers have considered the story of Chein Nang. And they have pondered, and they have thought, and sometimes the truth is they have argued. How is it possible that there were two Chein Nangs and then there was one Chein Nang? And, well, After those hundreds of years of pondering and deliberating and arguing, they have come to a conclusion. And this is the conclusion of the scholars and philosophers. We do not know. So they do not know. They are confused by the story of Chein Nang. But Chein Nang knew. And I believe that many women over these many years have known what Chein Nang knew. And that is that somehow, some way, sometimes it is absolutely necessary for a woman to be in two different places at the very same time.